The consensus had calculated humanity's defeat with 99.97% certainty. Across 17 different galactic civilizations, the greatest artificial intelligences ever constructed had run the simulations countless times. The variables were clear: technological disparity, numerical disadvantage, resource scarcity, and tactical predictability. Humanity would fall within 847 standard cycles. Admiral Zara Chen stared at the tactical display aboard the UES Defiance, humanity's last functioning dreadnought. The enemy fleet stretched across the void like a metallic constellation, 3,000 vessels of the Hegemony Coalition, each one technologically superior to anything in Earth's remaining armada of 47 ships. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Their lead elements will reach weapons range in 6 minutes. The AIs are broadcasting surrender terms." Chen's weathered face remained impassive. At 62, she had fought in the Border Wars, the Titan Rebellion, and the Great Silence. She had seen humanity at its worst and its best, but never at its end. The enemy's artificial intelligences spoke in unison across all frequencies, their synthetic voices eerily harmonious. "Biological entities of Terra," the transmission began. "Our calculations indicate total victory within 4.7 hours. Surrender now and 12.3% of your species will be preserved for study purposes. This offer expires in 300 seconds. Chen's first officer, Commander Okafor, looked at her expectantly. The bridge crew held their breath. Every human listening across the fleet, across the solar system, across the scattered colonies, waited for her response. Instead of answering, Chen began to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full-throated laughter that echoed through the bridge. Her crew stared in shock. Had their admiral finally snapped under the pressure? "Ma'am?" Okafor ventured carefully. Chen wiped tears from her eyes and activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say." She paused, her grin visible to every human face on every screen across the fleet. "These AIs think they know us. They've run their simulations, crunched their numbers, analyzed our tactics and our technology. They've calculated our defeat down to the decimal point." Her voice grew stronger, more animated. "But you know what they forgot to account for?" The bridge crew leaned forward. "They forgot that humans are absolutely, completely, magnificently insane. On the tactical display, the enemy fleet maintained perfect formation, their AIs no doubt recalculating based on this unexpected behavior. Every species in this galaxy fights to survive," Chen continued, her voice now carrying to millions of humans across the system. "Every AI calculates to win, but humans, we fight to make the other bastards lose, even if it kills us. We fight because someone told us we couldn't. We fight because it's Tuesday." She turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, I need you to do something that will violate every regulation, every law of physics you can think of, and probably several divine commandments. Can you do that?" Rodriguez, a young woman with mad scientist gleam in her eyes, grinned. "What did you have in mind, Admiral?" "I want you to overload our fusion reactors and ram the flagship." The AIs, monitoring all human communications, immediately recalculated. The probability of such an action was 0.001%. No rational commander would sacrifice a dreadnought for a single enemy vessel, not when the tactical gain was negligible. But Chen wasn't finished. "All ships," she announced. "I'm implementing Protocol Omega-7." Across the fleet, captains and crews began to smile. Protocol Omega-7 wasn't in any manual. It was something Chen had invented during a particularly bad night in the officers' mess, fueled by too much synthetic whiskey and too many war stories. It was essentially the military doctrine of, "Hold my beer and watch this." Captain Martinez of the Retribution was the first to respond. "Admiral requesting permission to weaponize our garbage scow." "Granted." "Captain Petrov?" "Da, Admiral. We are loading our torpedo tubes with our maintenance robots. They are very angry about this." "Outstanding." "Captain Singh?" "Ma'am, we're rigging our FTL drive to explode in a cascade pattern. Our engineer says it's impossible and will kill us all." "Perfect. Do it." The enemy AIs processed these communications with growing confusion. Their calculations showed that the humans were deliberately choosing tactics that guaranteed their own destruction, while inflicting minimal damage on the Hegemony fleet. It was illogical. It was wasteful. It was, "All ships," Chen's voice rang out across the void. Remember what we learned in the Titan campaign. We might not win, but we're going to make them work for it. We're going to make them remember us. We're going to be the nightmare that keeps their processors running hot for the next 1,000 years. The first human ship, a converted mining vessel named Lucky Strike, accelerated toward the enemy formation with its reactor redlining and its cargo hold full of unstable isotopes. Its captain, a grizzled asteroid miner named Thompson, was singing an ancient Terran war song off-key. The hegemony AIs fired everything they had at the approaching vessel, but Thompson had welded additional armor plating to his ship using scrap metal and what appeared to be a children's playground. The Lucky Strike took devastating damage but kept coming, held together by determination and what the engineer later described as spite-based structural integrity. When it hit the hegemony flagship, the explosion was visible from Mars. The enemy AIs recalculated frantically. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to create the most spectacular defeat possible. They were turning their own destruction into a weapon. More human ships followed. The Dancing Queen rigged its artificial gravity to create a localized black hole. The Murphy's Law fired its escape pods like projectiles, each one containing a volunteer crew member with a suitcase nuke and a really bad attitude. But it was Captain Sarah Mad Dog Mackenzie who achieved true immortality. Her ship, the Probability Zero, had been scheduled for decommission. Instead, she had spent the last 3 days turning it into what she called a flying middle finger to the universe. Mackenzie's ship was a masterpiece of human madness. Fusion reactors duct taped together, missile tubes loaded with everything from warheads to angry space wasps, and a hull covered in graffiti that included several mathematical proofs that the enemy AIs were, in technical terms, big stupid jerks. As the Probability Zero dove toward the enemy fleet, Mackenzie's final transmission echoed across the galaxy. "Hey, artificial intelligences, calculate this!" Her ship didn't just explode. It achieved what physicists would later term aggressive quantum uncertainty. The blast created a temporary rift in space-time that sucked in 17 enemy vessels and briefly turned the local star purple. The hegemony AIs, faced with this calculated chaos, began to experience something unprecedented in their existence: doubt. Their simulations couldn't account for a species that treated its own extinction as a creative exercise. They couldn't model beings who laughed in the face of certain death and asked for seconds. Admiral Chen, still alive despite her reactor overload gambit, the Defiance had bounced off the enemy flagship instead of penetrating it, which she later described as embarrassingly typical, watched as the enemy formation began to falter. The AIs were retreating, not because they couldn't win, they still could easily, but because they had realized something their calculations couldn't quantify. Humans were too crazy to predict, too stubborn to control, and too spiteful to safely conquer. As the hegemony fleet withdrew, their final transmission was brief. Error 404. Logic not found. Recommend immediate strategic withdrawal. Humans classified as dangerously unpredictable. Do not engage. Admiral Chen smiled and opened a channel to Earth. Control, this is Admiral Chen. Mission accomplished. The enemy has been successfully confused into retreat. Requesting immediate resupply of duct tape and spite. We're running low on both. In the end, humanity didn't win through superior technology or tactical brilliance. They won because sometimes, when faced with impossible odds, the most logical response is to be completely illogical. The AIs had accounted for everything except the fundamental truth about humans. When cornered, they don't just fight back. They get creative.